Okay, so let's see. So it dropped. I'm not sure. Something happened with the internet on my end. Uh, as I'm earlier in this meeting talking about problems with internet, I'm sitting here in Antalya of all places, and my internet drops. Okay, so let's go ahead and finish this up as quickly as we can, so that we can hopefully get on with the rest of our day, right? All right. So where was I? So we're getting closer and closer to SQL. So that's where I was leaving off with that. Okay. All right. So we're going to, that was all step 2.1. That was all the logical database definition phase, step 1. So now step 2, do normalization. So we're going to take these tables and we're just going to make sure they're normalized. Many of them will be, simple relations like, a simple relation like a private owner or a client, they're going to be normalized. They're going to already be normalized. We're fine with that, right? But we just want to validate that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our relations as they exist, and we're going to follow that normalization process to whatever level of normalization that your company or your organization requires. Okay. 1 second. Let me make sure this is recording. It is. Okay. Okay. We're going to validate those relations against user transactions. So we're going to take the user transactions of how they anticipate, how they expect to use the system, and we're going to make sure that it works the way that they expect. Okay. We're going to check for integrity constraints. We're going to make sure that in our logical model, anything like required data, what can and can't be null, attribute domains, okay, what can they be, what types of values and what possible values can they be, referential integrity, entity integrity, make sure every entity, every relation needs to have a primary key, referential integrity, making sure that foreign keys for those relationships are in place. Okay. So something like this, all right? So the foreign key, making sure referential integrity is in place, all right? This is all about referential integrity. At 2.5, we're going to review the model with the users, right? We're going to make sure that our users sign off and are fine with we're going to make sure that our users are okay with what we've created. Okay? And then finally, we're going to, well, not finally, there's actually another step after this. We're going to merge the two models, if there is more than one, into a global model. Okay, so we're going to, if there's more than one model, we're going to merge it into multiple models. Okay, so, and even that has some sub-steps that we need to talk about. Okay, so to merge, all right, we need to merge them, merge into a global model, validate the global, make sure it works with our user transactions, and then review that with the users as well. So, okay, how are we going to merge? Okay, we're going to review the names and contents of the entities, the tables, and their candidate, their primary keys. Okay, and then we're going to review the types and names and what there is of the relationships of any foreign keys that exist. Okay, we're going to merge entities together from the local into a global. Now this is where I get into what I talked about before, is what if you had one part of the system and you called the people who work for the company the staff, and you had a staff table, right? And somebody else working on a different part of the system, but also had the staff information. They also had to do stuff with staff. And they called their table the employee table. Well, you and I, we would look at this situation and we would say, well, clearly employee and staff are the same thing. So they should be the same table, or they represent the same information, right? But we have two different tables, two different entities with the with a different name representing the same thing in the two models. Right? So what we need to do is we need to merge them. Right? We need to take, excuse me. So we need to take any entities. All right. First thing. Okay. We need to include without merging, okay, any entities and relations that are unique. Okay, so if, for example, if we go back, let's say in addition to this, let's say the other team was in charge of the staff branch stuff. Okay, staff branch, HR stuff maybe. Okay. Well, they wouldn't have the client information in theirs, so client just comes over as is, just automatically. We don't have to do any merging. We don't have to do any special things. We just bring the client table over. Client relation comes on over. Staff and employee get merged into a single entity. Okay, so at the end of these two steps here, 3 and 4, what we're going to have is we're going to have all the entities that are unique just brought over as is, and we're going to have all of the entities that represent the same thing merged into one. And the reason why we say merge and don't just say just take one and not the other, like we don't just say, well, staff is a better word, so we're going to take the staff table and bring it over. Well, the problem is what if there's data in the employee table? What if there are attributes in the employee table that don't exist in the staff table? All right. So what you have to do is you have to take the staff table, take the employee table. Okay, you have to say, okay, we're going to make one table that represents staff employees. We're going to take all the attributes from staff, and then we're going to take all the attributes from employee that don't exist in staff. Okay. Here's another problem. What if the two expected data types aren't the same for two things, right? What if one group said, hey, let's store telephone numbers as a string of characters, right? As a string, as a 10-digit string of characters, something like that. And the other group said, oh no, all of our phones numbers start with 90. So look, let's store, none of them have a leading 0. So let's store all our telephone numbers as numbers, right? And it could happen, right? So what do you do there? What do you do if one group said store this data as this type and another group said store this data as this type, right? So now we need to figure out, okay, which is better, which is more accurate, which is a better way to store that information, and we're going to choose one of those. Okay. So then step 5 and 6, and this just gets us all of the entities, the relations. Okay. Then we have relationships. Okay. Some relationships are just unique, right? Relationships, the relationship between staff and branch doesn't exist in our ER model we've been looking at here, right? So we just include that. Don't do anything with it. Right? We have other relationships that, again, may or may not be the same, right? If they are the exact same, great, we just bring them over from both models, right? But what if they're not the exact same? What if, for whatever reason, you had staff has a supervisor relationship that in one version, in one non-merged version, this was a 1 to 10 relationship, and then the other it's a 1 to 20 or a 1 to 5. You know, which one do we keep? So we got to make decisions about that. So merging isn't just automatically taking from one over the other. You know, it's not like flipping a coin, right? What you do is you have to decide which of those two relationships should come over. Okay. So we take those relationships. We're going to check for missing entities and relations. What or relationships or foreign keys, or is there anything that's missing from our data model? Okay. Check our foreign keys, check our entity constraints. We're going to draw another diagram that represents the entire thing. right? And we're going to update our documentation to represent that. Okay. So now instead of having one diagram with a staff table and one diagram with an employee table, what we're going to have is around one global diagram with a staff or an employee table. Okay. All right. So we validate that global model. We review it with the users. They sign off on it. They say this is correct. This is what they expected to see. All right. So now we have, again, our not SQL. This is not SQL, but we could build SQL from this, right? We could build some SQL scripts from this. All right. And this represents the global thing, the whole thing. All right. Property for rent, the client, the lease, staff, all of these things from our original diagram, plus the other tables from the other side, from the thing that we merged with. And finally, we have an overall global diagram here. Okay? Where you have, property for rent, right? Client, lease, and viewing. We had all this, right? Right. The registration represents the staff that registers a client to a branch. Right. So notice this is all some other stuff over here that we have. Okay. Branch and advertisements and newspapers. This was all stuff that we did not have. This was all stuff that we did not have in just our staff property for rent side. Right. This is stuff that was part of the other model, the other team that was working on this, and we merged those together with ours. Okay. So I hope this is clear. I will plan, what I'm going to do is I'm going to plan to pull back off of this. Let me stop sharing. Okay. What I'm going to plan to do is I'm going to plan to do like a whiteboard style drawing of some of the stuff that we've discussed in this lecture. I feel that this is very important, especially the merging stuff and especially how the different tables are taken and how the different entities, how the different entities are taken and then made into relations, made into tables, because that to me is really important for you to understand. And normally this lecture and to some degree the follow-up, the physical database design, is one that I would really make use of the whiteboard if we were in the classroom right now. And so, and unfortunately, as you can see, I don't have a whiteboard access here. And so what I'm going to do is my plan is to go ahead and, like I did before, is I'm going to draw out on a whiteboard style thing on a tablet, and and I'll upload that that later this week. Okay. All right. Assuming as usual there's no questions, but if there is, you can let me know. If you want to let me know if there's any questions. Otherwise, we'll end this, and I'll upload this video and the one that got cut off from the meeting that ended unexpectedly earlier. Okay. All right. Have a good afternoon, and I will see all of you on Thursday.